"We don't need old men like you dragging us down," he said, flipping his hair like dismissing me was nothing. "My name is Walter Patterson. I'm 59 years old, been the operations manager at Harper Machinery in Indianapolis, Indiana for 18 years. Not the kind of man who made speeches or demanded attention in meetings, just the steady hand that kept the gears turning at a company that manufactured industrial equipment for half the factories in the Midwest." Ryan Harper thought he was modernizing the company. He had no idea what he'd just unleashed. I just smiled sarcastically, nodded once, walked out of his office. No arguments, no threats, no drama. Just cleared out my desk methodically while the younger staff averted their eyes. Some I'd hired as teenagers, now men and women with families. I'd trained every single one. Nobody said a word as I packed almost 2 decades of my life into a cardboard box. Charles Harper had built this company with his own hands 43 years ago. Started with a single lathe in his garage, built it into a $30 million business through pure grit and a reputation for reliable machinery. He'd handpicked me to run operations when his health started failing. "You're the only one I trust not to cut corners," he'd said. Now his son Ryan, 28 years old with a business degree and 2 years living in Miami, had decided the company needed modernization and fresh perspectives. Code for getting rid of anyone who remembered how things were done before spreadsheets replaced common sense. As I walked to my truck carrying that pathetic box of personal items, I felt a strange calm. Because what Ryan didn't know, what he hadn't even bothered to check, was that my employment contract had a very specific clause. One that Charles himself had insisted on to keep me from being poached by competitors. A severance penalty equal to 2 full years' salary if I was terminated without cause. I placed the box into the passenger seat, sat there for a minute, hands resting on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I could see the production floor, equipment I'd maintained myself, systems I'd implemented, people I'd hired, all about to learn what happens when institutional knowledge walks out the door. I didn't slam the door, didn't screech out of the parking lot, just turned the key, put the truck in drive, and headed home to call Eugene Carter, a lawyer friend who'd been waiting for an excuse to take on a corporate case this straightforward. If you like stories about betrayal and how real experience can beat arrogance, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel right now. Every day brings completely new stories, each one more surprising than the last. I'd never been the flashy type. Married 29 years to my wife Linda before cancer took her 4 years ago. Raised 2 kids who were both doing well, son in Denver with an engineering firm, daughter teaching 3rd grade in Cleveland. My life had been built around consistency and reliability, the same approach I'd brought to Harper Machinery. Charles Harper had been more than just a boss. In many ways, he was the father figure I never really had, my own dad having disappeared when I was 11, leaving my mother to raise 3 boys on a secretary's salary. Charles had taken a chance on me back when I was 41, coming off a layoff from a dying automotive plant with nothing but hands-on experience and a community college degree in mechanical engineering. "Credentials don't build machines," Charles had said during my interview. "Men with sense and skill do." He'd promoted me to operations manager within 2 years. Charles and I weren't the types to go fishing together or hit the bar after work, but there was a respect between us that went beyond the workplace. When Linda got sick, he'd been the one to rearrange my schedule without me even asking, ensuring I could take her to every treatment. "Family first, Walter, always." The first warning sign came about a year ago when Ryan started showing up at meetings. Fresh out of business school, carrying a leather portfolio and trailing a cloud of expensive cologne, talking about synergy and market disruption. I'd catch Charles wincing sometimes at his suggestions, proposals that would have gutted our quality control or outsourced components we'd always made in-house. But he never contradicted him publicly, just quietly fixed things afterwards. "He needs to learn," Charles told me one afternoon, leaning against my office doorframe. "Some lessons can't come from books." The second warning was when Charles announced his retirement 3 months ago. "Heart problems," he said, though I suspected it was more about succumbing to Ryan's pressure. He looked defeated when he handed me the updated organization chart with Ryan's name at the top. "I made him promise to keep the core team intact," he'd said, not quite meeting my eyes. "The experience you all bring is what makes this place work." I just nodded, but something in my gut tightened. The way Charles wouldn't look directly at me, like he knew what was coming but couldn't bring himself to say it. The morning after my termination, I was sitting at my kitchen table reviewing my employment contract with Eugene when my phone rang. Charles's name lit up the screen. I almost didn't answer it. Almost, but 18 years of respect doesn't vanish overnight. "Walter," his voice sounded strained. "What the hell happened yesterday?" "Ask your son," I said, keeping my tone neutral. Not angry, just stating facts. "I did. He said you were—" He paused, searching for words, resistant to the new direction. Said you were undermining his authority with the floor team. I said nothing, just let the silence stretch between us. Charles knew me better than that, knew I'd never undermined anyone. You're going to file, aren't you? He finally asked. Already have, I replied. Eugene Carter is handling it. Charles exhaled heavily. I told him to look at the contracts, told him before I stepped down that there were protections in place. Another pause. He said he cleaned house yesterday. You, Frank, Carol, anyone over 50? My jaw tightened. Frank had been our head of engineering for 12 years. Carol ran the quality control lab like it was her personal kingdom. Both irreplaceable in their own ways. Is that the direction you wanted, Charles? Clearing out everyone who built the place with you? You know it's not, he said, voice tired. But I gave him control. It's his to run now. I heard voices in the background on his end, one of them distinctly Ryan's, sharp and demanding. I've got to go, Charles said quickly. The call ended abruptly. I set the phone down and stared at my contract spread across the table. Section 12, paragraph 3, in the event of termination without documented cause as defined in Appendix C, employee shall be entitled to severance compensation equal to 24 months of current salary. Eugene had highlighted it in yellow. It's airtight, he'd told me earlier. They'll either pay or we'll take them to court where we'll win and they'll pay my fees too. I walked to the window overlooking my backyard. The maple tree Linda and I had planted when we first moved in 26 years ago now towered over the property. We'd nurtured it through 2 lightning strikes and a disease that nearly killed it, patched it up, supported it, gave it what it needed to thrive. Something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about value, about recognizing what experience brings to the table, about respecting the foundation others built before you decided to renovate the house. I picked up my phone and called Frank, then Carol. By noon, I'd spoken with every veteran employee Ryan had axed. Some were shell-shocked, others furious, all of them worried about their futures. Take a breath, I told each of them. Check your contracts, call Eugene. Then I made one more call to Pete Daniels, owner of Precision Parts across town, a man who'd been trying to hire me away from Harper for years. Still interested in that conversation? I asked him. 3 days after being fired, I sat across from Ryan and Harper Machinery's corporate attorney in a downtown office. Eugene Preston beside me, his weathered briefcase open, my contract prominently displayed. This is ridiculous, Ryan said, not even looking at the document. We're implementing a new direction. That's cause enough. Eugene, 67, with the patient demeanor of a man who'd seen every corporate trick, simply pointed to the highlighted clause. Termination without cause as defined in Appendix C requires severance equal to 24-month salary. Approximately $320,000 in Mr. Patterson's case. The corporate lawyer, young guy named Justin who looked fresh out of law school, scanned the contract with growing discomfort. Mr. Harper, the definition of cause here is quite specific. Performance issues, ethical violations, criminal acts. He was resistant to change, Ryan interrupted, crossing his arms. That's insubordination. Where's the documentation? Eugene asked. Written warnings? Performance improvement plans? Because Appendix C requires a documented pattern, not a single instance. Justin flipped through a thin folder in front of him, finding nothing. Ryan's face tightened. Fine, he said. So we pay him a few months severance and move on. 24 months, Eugene corrected, as stipulated. That's ridiculous, Ryan snapped. We'll offer 6 months. Take it or leave it. I stayed silent, watching him. In that moment, he reminded me of his father, the same stubborn set to his jaw. But Charles's stubbornness had always been in service of building something. Ryan seemed aimed at tearing down. Eugene closed his briefcase. Then we'll proceed with legal action. Discovery should be interesting, especially regarding the simultaneous termination of multiple employees over 50. Justin's eyes widened slightly. He leaned toward Ryan and whispered something urgent. Ryan brushed him off. Before you make threats, Ryan said to me, ignoring Eugene completely, you should know we're prepared to fight this. You'll be tied up in court for years. I finally spoke. I've got time. And we'll make it known throughout the industry that you're difficult, Ryan added. Good luck finding another position at your age. That's when Charles appeared in the doorway. I hadn't seen Charles since his retirement party. He looked thinner, paler, but his eyes were sharp as ever. Ryan, he said quietly. A word, we're in the middle of something, Dad. Now, not a request. They stepped outside. Through the glass wall of the conference room I could see them arguing, Charles gesturing emphatically, Ryan's posture growing more defensive. When they returned, Ryan wouldn't look at me. Justin, Charles said, prepare the severance agreement as written in the contract. Dad, Ryan started. Not now, Charles turned to me. I apologize, Walter. This isn't how I wanted things to end. I nodded once. Nothing more needed to be said between us. As Eugene and I stood to leave, Ryan stepped in front of me. This isn't over. I'll be reviewing all vendor relationships. Any company that hires you can forget about doing business with Harper. Charles paled at his words but said nothing. I just nodded again, thinking about my conversation with Pete Daniels the day before. About the partnership offer he'd made. About the niche market Harper had been ignoring for years that Precision Parts was poised to enter. You're right about one thing, I told him. It isn't over. But what Walter didn't expect was how far Ryan had already gone with his plans. The severance payment hit my account a week later, $320,000 minus taxes. More money than I'd ever seen at once. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. Money wasn't the point. Neither was revenge, really. It was about something deeper. That same afternoon, I met Frank Baldwin, our former head of engineering, at a diner halfway between our homes. The place was nearly empty at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just a couple of truckers at the counter and us in a back booth. Eugene got me a year's severance, he said, stirring his coffee without drinking it. Not as good as your deal, but better than nothing. They want me to sign an NDA, though. Frank nodded. Can't talk about proprietary processes or business practices for 5 years. He gave a bitter laugh. 40 years in engineering, and suddenly I can't talk about my own work. You signing it? Don't see much choice. Got a granddaughter starting college next year. I pushed a business card across the table. Pete Daniels, Precision Parts. He's looking for a consultant. Someone who understands precision hydraulics. No NDA required. Frank stared at the card. Harper would sue me if I took this. Not if you're just advising on general industry standards. Nothing proprietary about that. He pocketed the card slowly. What's going on, Walter? This isn't like you, stirring the pot. I hadn't told anyone about my arrangement with Pete yet, but Frank deserved to know. We'd worked side by side for over a decade. I'm partnering with Precision, I said quietly. Pete's bringing me in to head up a new division. Specialized hydraulic components. The small batch, high-margin stuff Ryan thinks is a waste of time. Frank's eyebrows shot up. The custom work. Charles always said that was Harper's future. And Ryan's killing it to focus on mass production. Thinks he can compete with overseas manufacturers on price. He can't, Frank said flatly. Not with our labor costs. I know, so does Charles. Frank leaned forward. Is that why you're telling me this? You think Charles is involved somehow? I shook my head. No, but I had lunch with Carol yesterday. She said Ryan's been liquidating equipment. The specialized machinery Charles bought last year for the custom work. He's already sold half of it. That's over $2 million in equipment, Frank said, eyes wide. At auction prices, probably got 30 cents on the dollar. Frank sat back, understanding dawning. He's stripping the company. Converting assets to cash. I nodded. And guess who's been buying property in Miami? Jesus, Frank ran a hand over his face. Does Charles know? I don't think so. He built that company for legacy, not liquidation. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing what this meant. Not just for us, but for the 100+ employees still at Harper. For Charles's life's work. What are you going to do? Frank finally asked. Build something better, I said simply. Something that respects both the past and the future. With Pete Daniels? Frank sounded skeptical. Pete's just an investor. He's 2 years from retirement himself. Wants to back people who know what they're doing, then step aside. And let me guess, you need an engineer who understands hydraulics? I smiled for the first time in weeks. The position's yours if you want it. Once your NDA is limited to actually proprietary information, not general knowledge. Frank studied me. This isn't just business for you, is it? It's personal. It's about value, I said. About building something that lasts. That's all I've ever wanted to do. 2 months after my firing, I sat in Pete Daniels' office reviewing architectural plans for the new facility. The converted warehouse on the east side of Indianapolis would house Cornerstone Precision, our new venture specializing in custom hydraulic components. The name had been Frank's idea. Build from the corners up, he'd said. That's how you make something that lasts. Pete, a barrel-chested man with a full white beard and perpetually rolled-up sleeves, spread the supplier contracts across his desk. Machine shops confirmed, he said. They can deliver the first 5 units by next month. And the CNC programmer starts Monday. Pete gave me a knowing look. Former Harper employee. Said you recommended him. I nodded. Jason Wright had been at Harper for 6 years. Brilliant with computer modeling, criminally underpaid. Ryan had cut his department's budget by 30% while doubling his own salary. He'd quit 2 weeks ago. How many does that make now? Pete asked. 7, I replied. All top performers. Pete whistled low. Harper's losing talent fast. People follow good leadership, I said. Ryan's not providing it. My phone buzzed. A text from Carol, still working in Harper's lab but feeding me information. With her retirement 3 years away, she couldn't afford to leave, but she could certainly keep her eyes open. The message contained the photo of an internal memo. Production delays, quality control issues, 3 major clients threatening to pull contracts over missed deadlines. I showed it to Pete, who adjusted his reading glasses to see better. Just as we predicted, he said. The brain drain's affecting output already. I pocketed my phone, feeling no satisfaction in the news. Harper employed families I'd known for years. People with mortgages, kids in college, parents in nursing homes. Their suffering wasn't my goal. We should reach out to Midwest Manufacturing, I said, referring to one of Harper's biggest clients. Let them know we'll be operational in 60 days. Pete nodded, making a note. Already scheduled a meeting for next week. Their purchasing manager's eager to talk. I stood and walked to the window overlooking the warehouse floor below. Workers were installing the first pieces of equipment, the bones of something new, something built on respect for experience and innovation alike. My phone rang, Charles Harper's name on the screen. I should take this, I told Pete, who nodded and stepped out, closing the door behind him. Charles, Walter. His voice sounded tired, defeated. We need to talk. I'm listening, a heavy sigh. I know what you're doing. The new company, the Harper employees you're hiring away. I said nothing. It wasn't illegal, wasn't even unethical. Just business. I'm not calling to ask you to stop, Charles continued. I'm calling to ask for your help. That caught me off guard. What kind of help? The kind that might save what's left of my company. He paused. Ryan's been selling off assets, cutting corners on quality. The board's concerned. So am I. Why tell me this? Because you're the only one who knows every part of the operation. The only one who might see a path forward. Another pause. And because I should have listened to you months ago when you warned me he wasn't ready. I closed my eyes, thought about all those years working alongside Charles. Building something we were both proud of. Something that employed hundreds of people who trusted us to make good decisions. What exactly are you asking, Charles? Come to my house tonight. 7. Bring Frank if he's willing. The board wants to meet, to discuss options. Options? Yes. Charles's voice strengthened slightly, including a change in leadership. I looked down at the warehouse floor again, at our small but growing operation, at the future I'd been building out of the ashes of betrayal. I'll be there, I said finally. But I'm not promising anything. Fair enough, relief evident in his voice. And Walter, yes? Thank you for still taking my calls. That's when everything really started to change. 6 months after being fired, I stood in the back of Harper Machinery's main conference room. The quarterly all-hands meeting had just been called to order with Ryan at the head of the table, flanked by his new executive team. Most under 35, all looking nervous. I wasn't supposed to speak until the end. That had been the agreement with the board. Let Ryan present his quarterly results first. Give him the chance to explain the 37% drop in revenue, the lost contracts, the quality control failures. He was halfway through a presentation blaming market conditions and legacy inefficiencies when he noticed me. What is he doing here? He demanded, pointing to my direction. Charles, sitting quietly among the board members, nodded to the chairman, who stood. Ryan, the chairman said, the board has reached a decision regarding the company's leadership. His face went white. You can't be serious. Walter, the chairman continued, turning to me, would you like to explain the new arrangement? I stepped forward, holding a folder. The same one Eugene had prepared for my severance 6 months earlier, but with very different contents now. Harper Machinery is merging with Cornerstone Precision, I said, my voice steady. The board approved the acquisition agreement this morning. Ryan laughed sharply. This is absurd. I'm the majority shareholder. No, Charles said, standing slowly. You hold 20%. I maintained 51%, which I've now voted in favor of the merger. I slid the folder across the table to him. Cornerstone will absorb Harper's Custom Hydraulics division. The rest will continue under new leadership. My leadership, Frank said, stepping in from the doorway. Ryan flipped through the documents, his hands shaking. This is business, I finished for him. Nothing personal. A year after the merger, I stood in the expanded production facility that now housed both Cornerstone Precision and Harper Custom Hydraulics. Workers moved efficiently between stations, the rhythm of machinery creating a symphony of productivity I'd missed during my months away. Charles joined me on the observation platform, leaning heavily on his cane. His health hadn't improved, but his spirit had. Watching the company thrive again had been the best medicine. Quarterly numbers came in, he said, handing me a report. Best in 5 years. I nodded, scanning the figures. Profit margins up, employee retention stabilized, 3 new patents filed. Ryan called yesterday, Charles said quietly. From Miami. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. After the merger, he'd taken his settlement and disappeared. No goodbyes, no apologies. He's starting a consulting firm, he continued. Asked if I'd invest. Will you? Charles shook his head. Told him to come back to Indianapolis first. Learn the business from the ground up. The way I did, the way you did. He smiled sadly. And he hung up. He paused, but he called back this morning. Asked if the offer still stood. Below us, I watched Jason training 2 new programmers on our latest system. Carol in her lab coat, inspecting components with her characteristic precision. Frank at a workstation, sketching a design modification by hand before transferring it to computer. Experience and innovation working side by side. Not in conflict, not one replacing the other, but building something stronger together. You know, Charles said, when I wrote that severance clause in your contract, I never imagined how it would turn out. I smiled. Neither did I. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the company we'd both helped build continue to grow. Some lessons are expensive, but the ones that stick, the ones that change how we see the world, those are always worth the price. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe and hit that notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.